Have you ever noticed how some people cry during movies, during arguments, sometimes even during small conversations, while others can go through incredibly emotional situations and barely shed a tear? If you're someone who cries easily, you've probably heard things like, "Why are you so sensitive? Stop overreacting. It's not that serious." But here's the interesting part. Psychology suggests that crying easily is not a weakness. In many cases, it actually reveals something very specific about how your brain processes emotion. So today, we're going to break down the real psychology behind why some people cry easily, and why it might say more about emotional intelligence than emotional fragility. One of the biggest reasons some people cry easily is something psychologists call high emotional reactivity. This means your brain simply responds more strongly to emotional stimuli. When you watch a sad scene, hear someone's story, or feel tension in a conversation, your brain's limbic system, especially the amygdala, becomes more active. The amygdala is responsible for detecting emotional significance. For some people, it reacts quickly and intensely. So instead of just thinking about emotion, their brain actually feels it more vividly, and crying becomes the body's natural way of releasing that emotional buildup. In fact, emotional tears contain stress hormones and endorphins, which means crying can literally help regulate emotional pressure. Your brain isn't malfunctioning, it's actually processing emotion fully instead of suppressing it. Another major reason people cry easily is high empathy. Empathy is the ability to feel what others feel. When someone tells you something painful, or when you watch a powerful scene in a movie, your brain activates something called mirror neurons. These neurons help you simulate the emotional experience of another person. In simple terms, your brain temporarily steps into their emotional world. So when someone else feels pain, sadness, or relief, your brain partially experiences it too. That emotional simulation can quickly become overwhelming, and crying becomes the outlet. This is why people who cry easily are often the same people who are deeply compassionate and emotionally aware. Some people grow up learning to suppress emotions. They train themselves to hold things in, maintain composure, and push feelings aside. But others develop the opposite pattern. Their emotional system is more open and expressive. Instead of bottling emotions up, their brain allows feelings to move through the body immediately, and crying is simply the most direct release. Interestingly, research shows that emotion suppression can increase stress levels over time. So while society often labels emotional expression as weakness, psychology suggests that healthy emotional release may actually be better for mental well-being. Some people also have what psychologists call a highly sensitive nervous system. This concept was studied by psychologist Elaine Aron, who introduced the idea of highly sensitive people. Highly sensitive individuals process sensory and emotional information more deeply. They notice subtle facial expressions, tone changes in voices, small emotional shifts in conversations. Because their brain is constantly picking up these emotional signals, their internal emotional load becomes heavier much faster. So crying isn't necessarily about one moment. Sometimes it's the accumulation of many small emotional signals that finally overflow. Here's something that might surprise you. Many psychologists now believe that crying can actually indicate emotional awareness and regulation. When someone cries, they are acknowledging emotion, allowing themselves to experience it, and releasing it instead of burying it. People who never cry often aren't stronger. Sometimes they've simply learned to disconnect from emotional expression. But emotional disconnection comes with its own psychological costs. The ability to cry means your brain is still connected to your emotional system, and that connection is what allows humans to experience empathy, bonding, compassion, and healing. So if you're someone who cries easily, it doesn't mean you're overly dramatic. It might mean your brain processes emotions deeply, responds strongly to empathy, and allows feelings to move through you instead of getting trapped inside. In other words, your emotional system is active, aware, and human. And in a world where many people are learning to hide emotions, that ability might actually be a quiet strength. If you enjoyed this video and want to understand more about the hidden psychology behind human behavior, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And remember, understanding how your mind works is one of the most powerful ways to understand yourself. I'll see you in the next video.